The day my husband's family offered me $2 million to disappear from his life, they expected tears, anger, and a desperate signature. Instead, I smiled, because they thought they were paying a betrayed wife to walk away quietly after discovering my husband got his secretary pregnant. What they didn't know was that I had already found the one thing they were terrified of losing. A secret hidden behind years of lies, fake promises, and carefully protected family wealth. They placed a divorce agreement in front of me thinking they had won. But the moment I signed it, their nightmare began. My name is Emily Carter, and I was 31 years old when I discovered that the man I had spent nearly a decade loving had already built a future without me. For 9 years, I believed I had the kind of marriage people dreamed about. My husband, David Carter, came from a wealthy and influential family. His parents had built a powerful investment company, and from the outside, our life looked perfect. We had a beautiful home, expensive vacations, and everything that came with financial success. But what people didn't see was what happened behind closed doors. Before David became successful, I was there. When he was working late nights trying to prove himself, I was the person encouraging him. When he doubted his abilities, I reminded him of his worth. When his family questioned his decisions, I stood beside him. I never cared about his family's money. I cared about the man I married. At least, that was the man I thought I knew. Everything started changing slowly. At first, I ignored the small things. The late nights at the office. The sudden need to keep his phone face down. The way he would smile at messages but quickly lock the screen when I walked into the room. I convinced myself I was overthinking. After all, David was under pressure. His career was growing, and I wanted to be the supportive wife who trusted her husband. But then the distance became impossible to ignore. He stopped asking about my day. He stopped making plans with me. Even when we were sitting in the same room, it felt like his mind was somewhere else. I still didn't want to believe the worst. Until one evening, everything changed. I was using our shared tablet to look for a document, and a notification appeared on the screen. It was a message from someone named Victoria. At first, I thought it was work-related. Then I read the words. My hands went cold. The messages weren't professional. They were intimate, personal, the kind of messages that no wife should ever have to read. I kept scrolling, hoping I would find an explanation. Instead, I found months of conversations between my husband and his secretary. Victoria wasn't just his employee. She was the woman he had been seeing behind my back. And then I saw something that broke whatever hope I had left. She was pregnant. David wasn't just having an affair. He was preparing for a completely different life. A life where I no longer existed. I wanted to confront him immediately. I wanted to scream, throw the phone across the room, and demand answers. But something inside me stopped. I realized that if I reacted emotionally, I would only give them exactly what they expected. A heartbroken wife. A woman who would make a scene. A woman they could control. So I stayed quiet. And instead of confronting David, I started collecting the truth. Because I knew there had to be more. And I was right. A few days later, David's family contacted me. They wanted a private meeting. When I arrived, I already knew this wasn't about saving my marriage. It was about protecting theirs. They sat across from me, acting sympathetic, saying David had made a mistake and that they wanted to make things easier for everyone. Then they placed a folder in front of me. Inside was a divorce agreement, and beside it, a check for $2 million. David's father looked at me and said, "Emily, this is a generous offer. We believe it's best if everyone moves forward." They thought they were buying my silence. They thought money would make me disappear. I looked at the papers. I looked at the check. And I smiled, because they had no idea what I already knew. I didn't sign the divorce papers that day. I took the folder home, placed the check on my kitchen counter, and stared at it for a long time. $2 million. For most people, that amount of money could change their entire life. And maybe that was exactly why David's family thought it would work. They believed I was looking at the number and forgetting everything else. They believed I would see the money, think about the humiliation, and choose an easy exit. But they made one mistake. They assumed I was only a hurt wife. They forgot that before I became David's wife, I was someone who knew how to analyze problems, find patterns, and uncover things people wanted hidden. And after what I discovered about Victoria, I started looking deeper. Not emotionally.
Strategically.
The first thing I did was review every financial record connected to our marriage. For years, David had handled most of the business conversations in his family. He always told me that his father's company was complicated and that there were things I didn't need to worry about. I trusted him, maybe too much. But now I was seeing everything differently. I started checking bank statements, investment accounts, and transactions I had never questioned before. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed small things. Payments that didn't make sense. Transfers that had vague descriptions. Expenses that were listed as business-related but seemed connected to David's personal life. The more I looked, the more uncomfortable I became. Then I found the connection. A series of payments linked to luxury hotels, private dinners, and expensive purchases. The same places David had supposedly visited for business meetings. The same months when he was becoming more distant from me. But the worst part wasn't the affair. It was realizing he had been preparing for a future without me while still using everything we built together. I kept digging. And eventually, I found something even bigger. David had been moving company resources in ways that benefited him personally. He wasn't just planning to leave me. He was positioning himself to take control of more power inside his family's company. Victoria wasn't simply the woman he cheated with. She was part of the new life he had already designed. The picture became clear. David and his family didn't offer me $2 million because they felt sorry for me. They offered it because they wanted me gone before I discovered the truth. They wanted a clean divorce. No questions. No investigation. No damage to their reputation. But they didn't know I had already started building my own case. I met with a lawyer quietly. I showed her everything I had collected. The messages. The financial records. The documents. She looked through the information carefully and finally said something that I will never forget. Emily, they are treating you like someone they can silence. They don't realize you may have the strongest position here. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't fighting to destroy David. I wasn't trying to hurt his family. I simply refused to let them rewrite the story and make me the person who lost everything. A few days later, David called me. He sounded confident. Almost relieved. Emily, I hope you've thought about the offer, he said. It's more than fair.
Fair.
That word almost made me laugh. Because there was nothing fair about betraying someone for years and then putting a price tag on their pain. I stayed calm. I have thought about it, I told him.
Really? He asked.
So you'll sign? I looked at all the evidence sitting in front of me. Then I smiled. Yes, I said. But what David didn't know was that I wasn't signing away my future. I was signing the beginning of his downfall. The day I returned to meet David and his family, I walked into that room completely different from the woman they had seen before. A few weeks earlier, they saw someone they thought was broken. A wife whose husband betrayed her. A woman they believed would be too emotional to fight back. But they didn't understand something important. Pain can make some people weak. But for others, pain makes them see clearly. David's father was sitting at the table with the same confident expression he had during our first meeting. The divorce agreement was still there. The $2 million check was still there. They thought this meeting was about my signature. They had no idea it was about their future. David looked at me and smiled. Emily, I hope you've realized this is the best decision for everyone. I looked at him quietly. The same man I once trusted. The same man I spent 9 years supporting. But now I didn't see my husband. I saw someone who had been creating an exit plan while pretending we were building a life together. I placed the divorce agreement back on the table. Then I placed a second folder beside it. David frowned. What's that? I smiled. Something you should have thought about before you decided I was easy to replace. His confidence disappeared slightly. I opened the folder. The first document showed the financial records I had discovered. The second showed the connection between his personal expenses and company resources. The third showed the timeline of his relationship with Victoria. The room became completely silent. David's father picked up the papers and started reading. His expression changed with every page. This isn't possible, he whispered.
But it was.
Every transaction, every message, every decision. I had documented everything. David immediately tried to defend himself. Emily, you're twisting things. You don't understand how business works. I looked at him and shook my head. No, David. I understand exactly what happened. You thought I was only your wife. You forgot I was also someone who notices details. The woman who helped you build your life was the same woman who discovered how you were trying to destroy it. David became angry. So what? You want revenge? I took a breath.
No.
I wanted honesty. I wanted you to admit what you did instead of hiding behind money and your family's influence. His father looked disappointed, not because of my pain, but because he finally understood the damage his son had created. The divorce negotiations changed immediately. The $2 million offer disappeared. The power shifted. The family that thought they could control the entire situation suddenly had to answer difficult questions. David lost the confidence he walked in with. Victoria, who believed she was stepping into a perfect future with him, quickly realized that future was falling apart. But the biggest victory wasn't watching their plans collapse. It was realizing I no longer needed anything from them. Not their money, not their approval, not their apology. Months later, when the divorce was finalized, I walked away knowing I had protected myself. I started rebuilding my life on my own terms. A smaller home, a quieter life, a future that belonged only to me. People sometimes ask me why I didn't just take the $2 million and walk away. The answer is simple. Because they didn't offer me money, because they respected me. They offered it because they underestimated me. They thought they were buying my silence. They thought they were closing the door on the past. But they didn't realize that envelope was the thing that pushed me to uncover the truth. The check they placed in front of me wasn't their victory. It was proof that they were afraid. And the biggest lesson I learned was this. Never underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose. Because sometimes the person you think you have defeated is the person who already knows how to win.